So, Roger, you've done nothing but been positive about Bannon. But behind the scenes, you're never really a negative guy, but you were just continuingly to say, it's Bannon, it's Bannon. And I almost, and I'm glad we hired you 8 months ago, and I'm glad you're our correspondent, but, I almost, didn't hire you because I just thought it's crazy to say Bannon is this double agent, but now you've been proven correct. How did you know this?
Well, Alex, so many things that didn't make sense in the beginning of the Trump administration now suddenly make perfect sense. The fact that Steve Bannon never helped any other true Trump supporter get into the senior White House staff. The fact that virtually every candidate Bannon promoted for a cabinet job, globalist Rex Tillerson, for example, the candidate of Condoleezza Rice, not a Trump supporter. So while giving lip service to the Trump movement, Bannon helped formulate an administration that was completely staffed by never Trumpers. It didn't make sense then. It does make sense now. It was Steve Bannon who was the original patron for General John Kelly, getting him first to Homeland Security, then helping him get into the White House Chief of Staff's job. Bannon and I met, I guess, a little over a month ago in New York for several meetings. We extended, as you know, an invitation to appear here on InfoWars, which he declined. I thought that was really strange. He was out of public office. It was an opportunity to speak to millions of freedom-oriented Trumpers around the globe, yet he passed on the opportunity.
But we're not mad at him about that. Let's go back to you saying it makes no sense. He's in there. He's doing nothing. We're being told by other sources he's helping bring them all in. He says he's for the agenda, but he's the one sabotaging it. He shows everybody the big board. And then going back about 8 months ago, as you were saying this, going back, to, I guess, about February of last year, but about 8 months ago, you started saying no. I'm telling you, he's building up a 25th Amendment with these generals, and then later you predicted they would throw him overboard, that he was a useful idiot. I mean, you literally called it. So how did you call it? I mean, tell folks what you told me behind the scenes.
Well, he told me a little over 2 months ago that Trump would be gone by July, that he was pessimistic that the president could survive. Little did I understand at that time, it was because of what he himself was orchestrating. And Alex, there's no question whatsoever that he saw himself as the president's successor. And now you have an entire new and disturbing line of inquiry. Remember that Steve Bannon was a member of the National Security Council until he was kicked off the council in August. During that period, he learned about Miles Kwok. Miles Kwok is a Chinese national living illegally in the United States that the Chinese government is seeking to extradite. Steve Bannon knew firsthand that the Chinese president had asked President Trump directly on 2 occasions, once at Mar-a-Lago, once at the G12 conference, about the extradition of the criminal Kwok, who was accused in China of executing multi-million-dollar cyber crimes, essentially stealing. What does Bannon do? He leaves in August, and by October, he has a financial deal with Kwok to finance Breitbart, as the Mercers, who I do think are patriots, appear to be ready to throw in.
So let's be clear, he's calling Trump a traitor, at the same time talking to a snake reporter that he brought into the hen house, and at the same time using national security intel to then go basically get money off of somebody so that he could be the person's political protector. By every stretch of the imagination, by every historical yardstick, this sounds like treason to me.
Well, and I'm told the FBI is all over this like a cheap suit. I mean, the question is, when did Bannon begin taking money from Kwok? How much did he take? I give Matt Drudge credit for the one who put together the pieces of this particularly nefarious scheme. But Bannon was clearly Kwok's protector during the time he was on the National Security Council.
But let's give credit as well. I first learned about Kwok from you, and I kept saying, why are you harping on Kwok? You said because it's the key to Bannon. You were the first to say that. Can you tell us the extra intel you had?
Yes, it's absolutely clear. Kwok is a double agent. I believe that he was working for the Chinese, spying on America. I believe that he then flipped and went to work for Pompeo and the boys in Langley. But quite clearly, Steve Bannon became his protector in return, I believe, at least allegedly, for funding for Breitbart. There you see it. So this entire thread is now coming together, and there he is. The man on the right is in the country illegally, fighting extradition, and more importantly, Alex, he's a fly in the ointment in terms of getting the Chinese assistance on North Korea.
We'll be back and talk about this. This is incredible. It's clear Bannon is incredibly delusional. Here we are the day after this all broke last week saying either Bannon goes or Breitbart goes. Big victory. Breitbart is Benedict Arnold. He is the enemy. He has been flushed. And then again, last night in that particular program, we played the clip from where I had said last week that either Bannon goes or Breitbart is going to be in deep trouble, which is a great organization, does a lot of great work. It's not about a pissing contest. It's not about enjoying going after Bannon. It's about being betrayed and then doing the post-mortem on that to find out exactly what is going on and what happened. That said, getting back into Kwok that you've been on for, gosh, 8 months, first person I heard talking about it, Bannon, espionage investigations, you couldn't get into it then. What can you tell us now about this mysterious tycoon and about your statement that sources tell you, and you're one of the most connected people I know, talking to reporters, mainstream, alternative, foreign, you name it, every day, every hour, every few minutes, on the report that you're getting that Bannon is under investigation by the FBI, and what are they investigating?
Well, it now appears, just to recap, that Steve Bannon, as a member of the National Security Council until last August, learned that Kwok was the subject of a tug of war between our government and the Chinese government, that the Chinese president asked President Trump directly for the extradition of Miles Kwok, and that the president has guaranteed that extradition. And this was most definitely one of the talking points in the president's efforts to get the assistance of the Chinese in terms of tamping down the North Korean nuclear threat. We now know that Bannon reached out to and engendered a relationship with Kwok after leaving, or perhaps contiguous with being on the NSC. And lo and behold, when the Mercer family, patriotic family out of Long Island, pulled the rug out from Breitbart's financially, well, Bannon announced that his new financier was none other than the Chinese national and fugitive criminal, Miles Kwok. This, to me, looks like self-dealing. It appears to be corrupt. It may, in fact, be treasonous if these facts are as represented. But, Alex, I go back to my meeting with Bannon several months ago, and his absolute certainty that Trump would be removed in a 25th Amendment play, and his long-sighted plan to get rid of Jared, get rid of Ivanka, with whom he is obsessed, and lay the groundwork for his own presidential candidacy. At one time, an operative who worked for Steve approached me and asked me what I thought of a Steve Bannon, Laura Ingraham ticket. I love Laura Ingraham. No one is more loyal to the president than she is. I can't see her joining such a ticket, but I now see the game plan. Take Trump down, blame Mike Pence and the deep state, step into his role. It is a duplicitous, incredible plan. that involved the takedown of Donald Trump.
And hey, that's how a lot of folks become successful. They just take over when Breitbart mysteriously dies, and then if the president can be destroyed or removed, suddenly you step into all of that. I mean, wow. And then meanwhile, he's so self-centered and delusional that he's got dandruff all over him. Looks like, you know, he drinks 14 bottles of scotch a week. But I mean, you got to give his behavior. I mean, post-mortem on him politically, I don't think he can come back from any of this. How did this slob think that he could game everybody? I guess he comes out of Hollywood. How did this slob, Slob Bannon, Jabba the Bannon,
Sloppy Steve.
Yeah, Sloppy Steve. I'm just giving him new accolades. How did he think he would execute this entire thing?
Well, the answer, Alex, of course, is money. He used the Mercer's money to buy himself into Trump world. Donald Trump is one of the world's foremost geniuses on using OPM, other people's money. It's one of the things that made him one of the great business successes. He's got the sizzle, you've got the cash. Let's make a lot of money together. It's worked for him his entire life, and it's made him a billionaire in his own right. So Bannon bought his way into Trump world using the Mercer's money. From day one, it's clear that he intended to push Trump aside and move to the head of the class. You're right about it being odd in the sense that Steve is a reclusive guy, rarely left his apartment in New York, by his own admission, never put on a suit, wore the same pair of shorts every single day, not exactly a hail fellow well met, no charisma, no magnetism of the Donald Trump, Ronald Reagan type. Why he ever saw himself as a candidate, it's extraordinarily hard to understand, but his Machiavellian game plan now is completely clear. It even took me a while to piece it together. When he was telling me Trump was going down in a 25th Amendment play, what he was saying was he was working with others to take Trump down in a 25th Amendment play, confident that once Vice President Mike Pence became president, with Donald Trump's blood on his knife, he, Steve Bannon, could emerge as the rightful heir to Trumpism, the rightful heir to American
nationalism. And then right as Bannon was about to be removed, he then, through Breitbart, put out, we're going to support Pence now, again, using that weapon in a Machiavellian way to attack Pence again with his ongoing strategy to make Breitbart the only good guy in the world. I mean, wow, that is sick. But if you look at all the evidence, that's what happened. Is there any way someone else was playing him and he was just the front schlub and he's just an innocent, dandruff-colored, red-eyed goblin?
No, I think that we have nailed this down. Look, what other explanation could there be for the fact that he never helped anyone else who was savvy about Trump? He never helped anyone who was a true early Trump supporter get into the White House staff. I can't tell you how many dozens of people he promised to help, that he pledged to help, but never lifted a finger.
And here's the last piece. Here's the last piece. He brings in the deep staters, still fails, but here's the key to all of it. He said, we're going after every Republican, even those that have good records. Only Ted Cruz will be left alone. Everyone must give us campaign money and support us or we'll come after you. Totally positioning themselves. And we know he first worked for Ted Cruz, put out the mafia dossier that was fake. So I think that's the other play, is those two together. I see Count Dracula, Ted Cruz at the center of this.
Entirely possible, Alex. Look, Ted Cruz is a Bush family retainer. He got a secret $1 million loan from Goldman Sachs, which he did not report on his campaign finance reports as required by law. His wife is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's a confection. He's a fraud. We call him Fat Dracula. And my guess is that he was Bannon's backup candidate. If the voters didn't buy Steve in a Trump takedown, maybe they'd buy Ted Cruz. Well, that's not going to happen.
How delusional is it with a guy that has the charisma of a dead rat with giant pinwheel red eyes and literally dandruff falling all over him? He's really dandruff Steve, flaky skin, eczema Steve, sorry, or whatever it is, unbathed Steve, filthy Steve, now Benedict Bannon. But I mean, I'm not just insulting him. It's who he is. If the shoe fits, I just don't get how he thought he would execute this. It is crazy.
Well, but it is hubris. Look, when you go from laying on your couch in Manhattan in your stuffy apartment to a palatial office at the White House, you can understand how he would begin to have delusions of grandeur. Trump does make it look effortless. He's like Ronald Reagan in that sense. He is a guy who glides through life from success to success because he has sound judgment and strong character. And Bannon may have thought perhaps he could supplant the president. This entire Machiavellian scheme has just come crashing down. If you go to Barnes & Noble, by the way, you'll notice that there are 3 different vanity biographies on Steve Bannon. He's on the cover of Newsweek this week, talking about his future plans. You can see the orchestration.
And we now know how he was the leaker. Do 5 more minutes with me because I want to get back to this. So you can confirm from your sources the FBI is investigating Bannon.
My sources tell me they're now looking into his relationship with Miles Kwok.